Starting your day off with a take on Vegas you won't get anywhere else.
Hi, I'm Holly Madison.
Hi, this is William Shatner.
It is Larry the Cable Guy, and I listen. Why? Because I'm a good American. So is he. And if you don't listen to him, you need to pack up and leave this country.
This is the Vegas Take with Sharp and Shapiro.
Come on, guys!
What's up, everybody? It is the Vegas Take, Sharp and Shapiro. Hump Day, baby. It's a Wednesday. That's right. Oh, boy, do we have a loaded show for you. If you're listening to us for the first time, well, we work here at 6 to 8 p.m. This is our new time slot, 9 a.m. to noon, and we are very happy to be bringing you all the top stories of the day, news, politics, sports, entertainment. We cover it all from a Vegas perspective. And like I said, we have a jam-packed show today. Coming up in hour number 2, Michael Avenatti will be joining us. If you haven't already heard, if you're living under a rock, he has been all over the news the last 48 hours in regards to this Nike scandal. Allegedly, Nike paying middle school kids money. Yeah, it just gets worse and worse. Michael Avenatti joining us in hour number 2, so that'll be a lot of fun. Hour number 3, UNLV head football coach Tony Sanchez will be joining us. A lot of people say he's on the hot seat. He's got to make a bowl game this year. Well, I'll ask him those questions. Does he feel that way? Does he feel he needs to make a bowl game to keep his job? Tony Sanchez joining us in hour number 3. The golf guru, Dennis Silvers, well, he's coming in because the end of the FedEx Cup, I guess you could call it, for the PGA Tour season-ending Tour Championship starting Thursday. This is a huge tournament. Tons of money on the line. Dennis Silvers will preview the Tour Championship coming up in hour number 3. And in hour number 1, we have Pat Cassell in studio. He is sitting across from me right now, eyeballing me. Pat, thank you so much for being here. How's it going?
Really good. Great to be here.
I appreciate you being here, Pat, as always, giving us a different perspective, and I always appreciate that. Along J.D. Sharp, I am Brian Shapiro. A lot to get to, so gentlemen, why don't we get right into it? A lot of ignorant things that Donald Trump said yesterday. I know that will shock a lot of people, but he questioned loyalty of Jewish people if they vote Democrat. We will get to that. And then a guy that I used to actually work with, his name is Wayne Allen Root. He's a right-wing talk show host who lives here in Las Vegas. Basically, and he's a conspiracy theorist. Let's just call it what it is. He says Donald Trump is the king of the Jews. We will get to that. It is one of the most idiotic statements I have ever heard anybody on radio say in my life. We will get to that coming up at the bottom of the hour. I want to start with this, though. We've been talking, sadly, about these mass shootings, white supremacy, for quite a long time, sadly. And this story came out in Florida. A 15-year-old boy arrested after threatening a mass shooting in his high school. And thank God, because we don't know what this kid would or could have done, what he's capable of. High school student Adam Guzzetti's online death threat, posted under an online gaming platform, was spotted by the FBI. And he said he vows to bring his father's M15 to school and kill 7 people at a minimum. Now, the video of this is very telling and interesting because let me just set the tone for you before we play this audio. This is the moment where the son is being arrested by law enforcement, and the law enforcement officers there are trying to explain to the mother why this child was arrested. Now, the law is pretty simple. If you threaten to kill somebody or threaten a mass shooting, whether you're an adult or a child, that is a felony, and that is an extremely serious crime. If you're an adult, you can face up to 15 years in jail for making a statement like that. Very serious. That's the point I'm trying to make. And we talk a lot about gun control, rightfully so. We talk a lot about mental illness, rightfully so. We even talk about the hateful rhetoric of the president. At least I do, the rhetoric. But this is something that we don't talk a lot about, and I have talked about it in the past. Parenting. Where are the parents in all of this? Well, I want to play this audio from you of this ignoramus, for lack of a better term, this mother of this 15-year-old that clearly doesn't think it's that big of a deal that her son threatened to kill people in his high school. So this is the mother of this 15-year-old Adam Guzzetti as the police are trying to explain to her why her son is being arrested. I want you guys to listen carefully to her response.
Second degree is when you involve a mass shooting of a school or an act of
He's a
terrorism.
little boy. He didn't do anything wrong. Yes, he's 15, but he's still a little boy, and he's not one of the crazy people out there doing stuff.
Okay, well, he did what he did.
Yeah, but he shouldn't be treated as though he is a terrorist or something because he made a silly statement on a stupid video game.
Well, in the world where schools and kids are going to school to learn and are getting shot and killed because people...
I understand that, but at the same token, I mean, you have to look at things case by case, too. I mean, he's not that person.
Do you own a gun?
I have a gun, yes.
Okay, so he has hands and feet. He can grab your gun and go do something.
He's playing a video game and he's a boy.
And that's why he'll be charged as a juvenile.
We had the chance
Yeah,
to
but
stop
I'm
it.
telling you right now, this is not my son. My son and I are like this, and it's just us. It always has been, and it's not my son. He's a little boy still.
Yeah, just completely idiotic. And before we get to that, I want to also play to you the police officer's response to those mothers' comments. So here's one of the police officers responding to the mother.
You need a roof over your head, food, and water. He doesn't need the game. You should probably
That's right, he doesn't.
You should take those away because these adults that are influencing may have done that in the past, but guess what? They're not in trouble today. He is because he made those statements. We can't put on what they've said in the past to give him justification why he said what he said, ma'am. Yeah. He made the charge. He's going to face the consequences.
And that police officer is absolutely right. Now, God, where do I even begin here? First of all, this mother clearly doesn't understand the seriousness of making a threat like that. That's number one. Number two, she puts no responsibility on her child. And listen, folks, I understand the mother wants to defend her son, but I'm going to tell you something right now. If I made death threats to anyone, particularly when I was 15 years old, and by the way, 15 years old is not a boy.
Yeah, 15 years old is right from wrong.
You're a teenager.
Absolutely.
If I'm 15 years old and I did that, my father would have said, go ahead, lock him up and throw away the key. He deserves it. Okay, let me start by saying this. And I already prefaced it by saying, listen, I understand it's the mother. The mother is an idiot. Okay, she is a moron. Do you remember what happened in Connecticut, right? Sadly, all those kids killed, the shooting in Connecticut.
She bought the stuff. She bought the kid the ammunition.
And the reason why I bring that up is because the mother knew her son was mentally ill, could not Sandy Hook is what I'm talking about. The shooter couldn't even have a conversation with somebody. He was so mentally ill. He wasn't even eating food. And she taught her son how to shoot a weapon. And it took her own life. And sadly, all these innocent kids and some adults because she was so complicit. This mother right here, make no mistake about it, is complicit. She starts whining and crying and saying, not my son. My son would never do it. Hey, dummy, do you realize how serious it is when you threaten to kill people? 15 years old is not a boy. Last I checked, a 15-year-old is old enough to know right from wrong. A 15-year-old could have a child. A 15-year-old is certainly old enough. Now, listen, if a 6-year-old said something like that, I'd say, yeah, it's a boy. You don't want to lock up a 6-year-old. 15 years old is old enough. And we see some of these mass shootings. Some of these kids are very, very young. How about Columbine? What were those kids, 16, 17 years old?
I'm not sure if she was complicit, but she's definitely delusional. And she's in a state of denial that she probably has a sociopathic son.
Well, when you say, I understand, but clearly you don't understand. An appropriate response would have been, okay, what's going to happen to my son? I would have been okay with that. How long is he going to be in jail? What do we need to do to get him help? And then look at the sunset. You shouldn't have said that. You shouldn't have said that. Now you're going to pay the price.
If you play that audio in front of a judge, if you happen to go in front of a judge, they're going to hang him. That's got to plea out, because if the judge hears that, the judge is going to look at the mother like, wait a minute. Your son is a good kid?
Right.
Are you kidding? That's a threat. You have guns in the house. Do you see what's going on? We just had mass shootings in the last month. 3.
Now, I understand.
4, actually. One in Georgia yesterday.
Considering how much this has been just covered in the media for the last month and a half, I'm sure she's been seeing this everywhere on social media, on TV, et cetera. And so there's definitely a state of shock. You can tell she's a bit in shock. And with that comes the state of denial, the delusion, et cetera. But it's a reaction like that, it makes you wonder if she is enabling the behavior.
Now, listen, we don't know what this kid is capable of. We don't know. And the police officers make a very valid point there. You know, they have a gun in the house. He's got feet, right? He's got arms. He could have grabbed that gun, and God forbid, who knows what he would have done.
Parents aren't accountable, Brian. They're just not. We were talking about coaching. I mean, the parents need to become accountable. We wussify our kids. We want to look the other way. And guess what happens when you look the other way? Look what happened with the 2 19-year-old Canadians.
Yeah. Here's what should happen to this 15-year-old kid, and sadly, this is what I think should happen to him. I think you should send, after he goes to jail and after they plea out something, he's a juvenile. I think this kid should go to the morgue. I want this kid to go to the morgue, and I want him to see what a body looks like after you shoot somebody. I want those images in his head for the rest of his life to make sure that he never not only makes those comments again, but it's not a joke. And let's see if he laughs after he looks at a bunch of dead bodies of people that are the victim of crimes that have been shot. That's what should happen to this kid. And I also would put him on a long, long probation. If he does anything wrong, and I mean anything, any type of threat, if he gets into a physical altercation with somebody, anything, he is going right back to jail. That is what I think should happen.
I don't know if I could agree with the physical. If he starts it, yes. But if somebody goes up to him, no.
What if somebody attacks him?
That's different. Obviously, I'm not talking about self-defense. That would be ridiculous.
But we live in a certain society with no tolerance.
Yeah. Well, listen, there should be no tolerance for this kid, and that mother is a complete ignoramus. Make no mistake about it. Obviously, they're not raising their child right. We'll open up the phone lines now, the GCI guys hotline at 702-257-5396. Again, that number to call if you want to be a part of this conversation. 702-257-5396 is the number to call. My personal opinion, this mother is a complete moron. She is an ignoramus. She is a horrible parent as far as I'm concerned. It is one thing to defend your child. It is another thing to defend his actions. And that is what she is doing. She is saying it is a joke. She is defending his actions in front of those police officers, whining, putting no responsibility on her child. There are many issues when it comes to these mass shootings. There are many issues. Gun control, mental illness, hateful rhetoric, white supremacy, whatever the case may be. There's a lot, social media, video games. We can talk about a whole plethora of subjects here that can create these monsters that commit these shootings. But with that being said, again, something that we don't talk about a lot in society, parenting. Okay? And I want to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll take more of your phone calls, or some of your phone calls. We haven't opened up the phone lines yet. The number to call, 702-257-5396. Again, that number to call if you want to be a part of this conversation is 257-5396. We will get to this in a few minutes here. President Trump talking about Jewish voters, saying they're disloyal if they vote for a Democrat. Somebody who does a show here in Las Vegas calling Donald Trump the king of the Jews. Folks, you can't make this stuff up. We'll take your calls at 257-5396. Take a quick break. We'll be back right after this. You're listening to the Vegas Take on the all-new 101.5 FM, 720 AM KDWN. All right, welcome back. It is the Vegas Take. Sharp and Shapiro, Pat Cassell in studio. And coming up in hour number 2, Michael Avenatti will be joining us for the hour. Boy, has he been in the news lately. Sports Illustrated doing a story on him, Yahoo Sports. Crazy stuff involving the Nike scandal. We'll get to that coming up in hour number 2. And as I mentioned, UNLV head football coach Tony Sanchez and the golf guru Dennis Silvers in hour number 3. We're talking about this 15-year-old who was arrested for making threats of going into his school in Florida and killing innocent people. And then we just played the audio for you of the mother defending her son, saying, he's just a boy. He's not a terrorist. He would never hurt anybody. So what are the police officers supposed to do? Are they supposed to go there and say, oh, okay, I'll take your word for it? What an ignoramus this mother is. I'm telling you, I would say it right to her face. What a horrible parent. People like that should not reproduce. I'm telling you. 257-5396, the number to call again if you want to be a part of the conversation. 702-257-5396. Why don't we start off with Brady? Brady, what's going on?
Yeah, good morning, guys.
What's up?
Hey, I want to bring up, like that Parkland shooter last year when that kid went into the school and shot everybody up. That kid was under the radar by the psychologist, the police, the security in that school. His friends all knew that he was a threat to society, yet he was able to go into that school and shoot up them kids, and everybody went after the gun, all them parents and everybody. That's when David Hogg came out of the woodwork and said all guns are bad. But then they had a committee review that came out, it was probably about 5-6 months ago, of what should be done at that Parkland school and what should have been done. And their number one thing is better security, more security, and more guns in that school, especially when you have 2,000 or 3,000 kids.
Okay, hold on. Let me stop you a little bit there, Brady. First of all, David Hogg, and I haven't heard anybody in Parkland say all guns are bad, so you're mischaracterizing what they are saying. They are talking about certain guns that they think are bad, and I tend to agree with them on that. So that's number one. Number two, I do agree. That kid, police were called to his house like 80 times or something. It fell under the radar, and it was a huge, huge mistake by law enforcement to allow him to be even out in society. So that part I agree with. But you are mischaracterizing what went on there in Parkland in the days and months and still afterwards. They want certain types of guns off the market. They've never said all guns are bad. That is not true. And, yes, Would it be better in a perfect world if that jackass coward Scott Peterson didn't act like a coward and he went into that school? Absolutely. Should they have had more security there at the school? I don't have a problem with security guards having weapons in schools. I don't have a problem with that. What I do have a problem is when people say more guns are 100% the answer. Every teacher, kindergarten teachers throughout grade 12 should all have guns, because that is ridiculous. That is absurd, Brady.
Well, no, I'm just saying, like, when you say every teacher should be armed, I would be more of the person to say that any teacher that wants to be armed and can be armed and trained and should be armed and trained, because once that perimeter of that school or wherever these shooters are coming into, just like the Garlic Festival, it was so secure. They had all them cops surrounding. It's a gun-free zone. You see what happens when the perimeter is broken. All it takes is, 30 seconds once they're inside a school or a perimeter. You need a gun inside to defend.
I agree, but I understand.
Bottom line.
I understand your point, Brady, but I would also counter with the fact that if these weapons of war are not being used, all these people would not die in bloodshed. You wouldn't have had 22 people that died at Walmart. You wouldn't have all these kids that died in Connecticut. You wouldn't have all these kids that died in Parkland. So we have to talk about all the issues, Brady. You can't just say, well, it's just this. It's just we need more teachers that are armed. We need more guns. No, that's not the answer. There's a lot of things that need to go into this. Mental illness is certainly one of them. And we're going to get to the president's ignorant comments coming up in the next segment, Brady, and it's good to hear from you. I appreciate the call. We're just going to have to disagree on that. He's mischaracterizing what those kids in Parkland said after these shootings. Not one person said all guns off the streets. Not one person said all guns are bad. You are mischaracterizing them and Republicans when they say they want to take away our Second Amendment. I've never spoken to a Democrat in my life that said they want to take the Second Amendment away from you. We're talking about specific guns, weapons of war. We're talking about background checks. Oh, yeah, that's right. The president flip-flopped on that because he's a coward. He's a coward, Pat.
I don't agree with you there.
Okay, well, explain this to me. Explain this to me. Last week, after the shootings, he said he was for comprehensive background checks. He wanted stronger.
We have comprehensive background checks now.
Not strong enough. There's too many loopholes in our background checks.
Give me a loophole.
How about going to one of those gun what would you call that?
Gun show?
Yeah. How about going to the gun shows?
You can't buy those guns anymore.
You can get a background check, but there are loopholes in those background checks. Well, simply,
if I have to do a background check,
if you are on a do not fly list, and if you go to one of those, you're allowed to get a gun. It flies under the radar. Many people that are on do not fly lists that could be terrorists are allowed to buy guns.
If it's a terrorist list, then that should be out there. Yes, we agree. But
do not fly list.
But I'm here to tell you, I've bought guns. I bought a shotgun from a guy who donated a gun for an auction, and I had to get a background check. The person who won the auction had to do a background check, could not just get the gun. They do background checks, and the questions are pretty easy to answer.
So let me ask you a question then. Why is it then days after the shooting he talked about how he wanted to get help on the right and the left to comprehensive background checks and that sort of thing, and he was speaking pretty tough on this. And then yesterday he backtracked and he talked about mental illness.
Well, I got to tell you, mental illness seems to be the biggest problem we have in the country. And here's the thing.
It is one of many issues.
But it comes to getting guns, though, when you look at some of these people who are getting the weapons, they're the ones that are not being properly screened. Listen, again, bad people will get guns. Like the shootout we had last week in Pennsylvania with Philadelphia. Those are bad. That guy's been arrested 30 different times. How did he get the guns? How do you prevent a bad person getting those weapons?
It's a difficult question to answer, but I think that there are things you can do to help prevent people like that from getting guns. Well, red flag laws to start, and it does appear to me that Republicans and Democrats are for that. Let me squeeze in another quick call here before we go to break. Let's go to Dave. Dave, what's going on?
What's up, Dave?
Hey, good morning, fellas. Hey, listen, you guys are kind of new to me, and I'm trying to be fair about this. I'm trying to give everybody a fair shake. At home, I watch Fox, I watch MSNBC. I change the channel.
So you switch it up.
I try to be fair. I try to be open-minded.
Bless your heart, because I can't do it.
Well, I'm trying like hell to get perspective from all angles. But I got to tell you, when I hear you guys talk, and I don't know who's who, so maybe I'm kicking the wrong dog here. But, man, all I see is that I get this image in my head of an Antifa guy running around with a mask on, setting cars on fire.
Wait, what are you trying to say? You're saying somebody in the studio is from Antifa? What are you talking about?
I'm trying to say that's the image that that you project.
Okay, well, you know what? You're 100% wrong, and that's an idiot thing to say because I've never been arrested in my life. I've never committed a violent crime in my life. I have opinions on Donald Trump, and because I want comprehensive gun background checks, you're going to compare me to Antifa? What kind of idiot would make a statement like that?
Well, I guess I'm that kind of
Well,
idiot.
I guess you are. What have I ever done to make you think that I'm a member of Antifa? Answer the question.
Well, just the way you talk.
What have I said? Be specific. What have I said that would make you think I resort to violence against people that disagree with me?
Well, that's the kind of guy you sound
Answer
like.
the question. Answer, and you sound like an ignoramus. You sound like a guy with a 20 IQ, and I could base that on this phone call. What do you think about that, Dave? Yeah, laugh your way to the bank, buddy. Have a nice day.
Hey, great
You're
call,
gonna compare
Dave.
me to Antifa. What an idiot you are. Not capable of having a conversation, not capable of having a debate, not capable of saying what he disagrees with me on, but probably a Trump supporter that doesn't like some of my opinions and wants to compare me to Antifa.
I'm a Trump supporter. I know you're not an Antifa guy.
Well,
I get it.
Guy's a complete moron. Anyway, we'll take a quick break and be back right after this. You're listening to the Vegas Take, 101.5 FM, 720 AM KDWN. All right, welcome back. It is the Vegas Take, Sharp and Shapiro. Pat Cassell in studio. Almost said Pat Cadell, the late Pat Cadell. So Pat's here. We got Michael Avenatti coming up in just a few minutes here. And that sound means this part of the show brought to you by the GCI guys at Realty One Group. And my man, Lee Goldberg, a former TV sportscaster, now wants to be on your home team. Buying, selling, renting, talk to the GCI guys. They'll save you money. Get this. All of our listeners get $1,000 in your hand at closing. And if you're a veteran, military, police, fire, teacher, or nurse, even hospitality or the casino industry, you'll get $2,000 back. Talk to the GCI guys at 702-902-3029. Call or text Lee right now. He'll answer 702-902-3029. Check them out at thegciguys.com. So we were just talking a little bit about this 15-year-old who wanted to, or at least he made the threat that he wanted to kill innocent people at his school, and I'm criticizing the mom for the way she reacted to this whole situation. Then we just had somebody call in who compared me to Antifa. It's just, that's kind of like me saying if you support Donald Trump, you must be a Klan member. Now, I have said that about a few Trump supporters because they've said racist things, but never would I generalize the entire population of people that support Trump as Klan members or racist. I would never make a comment like that because it's foolish.
But Democrats are doing that. They're saying you're a racist if you support Trump.
I can't speak to all Democrats, and I don't think all Democrats are saying that, but we got to get to the GCI guys hotline, which is 702-257-5396. Again, that number if you want to be a part of this conversation, 257-5396. Let's go to Carolyn. Carolyn, what's on your mind?
I like to talk about the mistaken notion that people have that mentally ill are responsible for these mass shootings.
Okay.
48% of Americans mistakenly believe that these incidents are perpetrated by the mentally ill. The fact is, mentally ill are 10 times more likely to be victims of gun violence than perpetrators.
Okay. Well, listen, let me say this, Carolyn, and I disagree with you a little bit in the sense that I think if for anybody on the planet that wants to kill an innocent person, obviously there's something not mentally right with you, right? I think we all can agree on that. Right, Carolyn?
Yes, but that's not the same as someone who is clinically mentally ill. So you really need to separate those two things.
Okay, and that's a fair debate. And look, never have I said that that's the number one issue. I think guns need to be addressed. I think the issue of guns, and the types of weapons of war that are out there, background checks. I think the mentally ill, I think we need to do a better job of helping people that maybe have that are mentally ill. But I don't necessarily disagree with you, Carolyn. I think the only point that I'm trying to make is anybody out there, whether it's a mass shooting or whether it's one person, if you are crazy enough to kill an innocent person or your spouse or a friend or a family member, obviously there's something not mentally right with you. I mean, we can call it evil because it is evil, but obviously there's something not right upstairs. That's all I'm trying to say.
Being angry or evil is not a mental illness. Unfortunately, most Americans, or I should say half of Americans, believe that it's mental illness that's the problem, and it isn't. And it's also not video games, by the way.
I don't think video games are a big factor. Let me ask you this: do you think let me ask you this:
I do think that video games makes it a little easier to pull the trigger, since that's what you do all day long.
Do you think the president's comments makes it a little easier to pull the trigger as well?
No, I'm saying I think video games make it easier for you to be used to pulling the trigger because you do it all day long playing video games.
And I'm asking you, do you think the president's comments in regards to illegals and Mexicans, calling them rapists and demonizing illegals, do you think that also makes it easier for a white supremacist to pull the trigger?
To actually physically pull the trigger? No.
Yes. So you're saying video games make it easier to pull the trigger,
I'm saying,
but the president's rhetoric does not.
If you're sitting there with a fake gun and you're pressing down a trigger, it'll be easier for you to press down a trigger in real life.
Carolyn, I appreciate the phone call, and I think you made some valid points. I guess we're going to disagree a little bit on that one. I do think video games plays a role, but I also think the president plays a role in some of his remarks, Pat. Let's take some more phone calls at 257-5396. Alex, you're next. What's going on?
What's up, Alex?
Hey, good morning, fellas. Real quick, a quick comment that you just made regarding whether the president causes people to pull the trigger. As you guys know, I'm Hispanic. I'm a Trump supporter. No, I don't think he does that. The only thing that's going to happen is that people that already have anger and have racist tendencies are going to do whatever they're going to do. And unfortunately, I really believe that part of the problem with this mass killing thing is the breakdown of the American family. Unfortunately,
I agree with him.
As being a Hispanic, and I knew when I was growing up as a young kid. I lived in a mixed area where there were Hispanics mostly and some white Anglos, and I started to see the divorce around affecting my friends.
Yes.
But at that time, it wasn't everybody that I knew, it seemed like. Now it's like everybody I know has been divorced. And they're
Alex, can I just interject and say I don't disagree with you? You're right. I think there are a lot of factors here, and never have I ever said that the president is solely responsible for these shootings. But you have to admit, Alex, that when the president describes Mexicans as rapists, okay, and he says, I suppose some of them are good people, that can put more fuel to the fire for people that are already racist. Now, you could make the statement, well, they would have done it anyway, regardless of what the president says. But I do think that the president's words do matter. I mean, he tells people of color to go back to their country. When you hear chants of send her back at some of his rallies, when you hear somebody at one of his rallies talking about shooting illegals and he kind of laughs it off and jokes it off, I do think that plays a role, Alex. That's all I'm trying to say.
Yes, I tend to agree somewhat with you, what you're saying, and I think that the reason Donald Trump won and got a lot of people to vote for him was because he brought out issues that haven't really been spoken about for many years. Myself as a Hispanic, I did not like it when I saw Hispanics marching in the streets with the Mexican flags and the Salvadorian flag, the Guatemalan flag. So I think when Donald Trump speaks like that, is because he's speaking for a lot of us, and I'm Hispanic, do not like the disrespect that other people have for our country and come in here and demand. They shouldn't be demanding. They should be pleading and have mercy on them to let them in. But they were demanding. I think when Donald Trump's just expressing what a lot of anger is in the country prior to his presidency. Obama didn't help much either, as you know. I agree with what you said, but I have to.
Okay. Alex, I have a question for you. You're here. Were you born and raised in the United States, or did you migrate here legally?
No, my parents brought me here back in the late 60s.
So you came here through the legal channels. When Donald Trump was identifying individuals the way he did, he was talking about those people that are coming here illegally.
But the majority of them are not rapists. The majority of them are not bad people.
There's a greater percentage of people coming illegally through the borders that are involved with MS-13 and doing a lot of crazy things, bringing drugs through. I mean,
I understand.
That's what he was talking about. And again,
exactly.
There's a difference.
Guns.
I had a meeting. I go to church, and I had a meeting with these gentlemen around a table one day. And if I had closed my eyes, I thought I was sitting there with a bunch of Anglo Trump supporters. But no, they were all Hispanic. And they weren't mentioning Trump by name, but they were supporting what he was saying. They didn't like the way he was saying it.
Alex,
I understood what he meant. And unfortunately, the way he said he's not a good politician.
Well, that's for sure. But Alex, listen, I appreciate your perspective. I think we disagree on some things and we agree on some things. And hey, you know what? That's fine. I don't have a problem with that. And I appreciate your perspective. Thank you so much for calling.
The last thing I want to say is, no, you're not an anti guy.
That's true.
You're not. You're very respectful. You're very respectful to the opposing opinion, and that's one reason I'm definitely going to continue listening to your show. I think it's going to hit probably number one because you guys are really, both of you are good. And Steve Sanchez, that's who the other guy is, right? Because I barely started listening to this show
Now, Steve is.
Really good.
Thank you,
really
Alex.
Good job at 6 p.m. and I appreciate you guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alex, for those kind words.
Thanks a lot, Alex.
We appreciate that. Yeah, Steve in no way is associated with our show. He does his own show, 6 to 8 p.m. He took over for us because we were doing 6 to 8 p.m., and occasionally we invite him on as a guest and vice versa.
We do a little cross-promotion.
A little bit of cross-promotion. But the guy we have in studio with us right now is Pat Cassell. He's a little bit more toned down, and I could actually have a conversation with Pat. But
he's a little more respectful.
Yes, and respectful to our guests and our callers, by
host.
the way. Yes, I agree with that, JD, 100%. Me and JD agree on something today. Let's go back to the phone lines, 257-5396. Let's go to Bruce. Bruce, what's going on?
What's up, Bruce?
Hey, Ben, what's up?
What's going on?
Hey, this is the first time I listened to you. I saw you on TV before. I always thought you had some pretty good points.
Bruce, can I ask you a question? Do I have a face for radio?
You know what? I mean, I remember how you looked. You seem like an okay guy for TV to me.
I appreciate that, Bruce. I wish the women would say the same thing, but that's okay, Bruce.
Bruce, do you have a crush on Brian?
No, don't answer. Bruce, don't answer that question. That's a bad question. So what's on your mind, Bruce? What do you think about this?
Well, it's the first time I realized you're on the radio, like I say, and you got a good show already. It's the first time I've heard it, and I'm going to be listening probably every day now. But
I appreciate that, Bruce. Thank you.
That being said, I'm going to say that the thing with these people that just go out in public and start killing people. Number one, I was a United States Marine.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you for saying that. I was an expert marksman, Ben, and I can only say that there's no possible way on God's green earth that the public should be able to buy any type of weapon that you can load a clip up
right
and just start shooting people. I mean,
yeah.
I'm from Western Pennsylvania originally. I've been in Vegas 23 years. But,
yep.
Where I grew up, hunting deer and quail and all that was a big thing. Hunters, God bless them. God bless people that have a firearm.
Can I ask you, Bruce, are you a Republican?
It's funny you said that, but one of the things I wanted to bring up on my time here with you guys is I used to kind of consider myself Democratic when I was younger, and Western PA was real strong Democrat because back then they kind of identified more with the working class.
Sure.
And then I kind of changed a little bit when Reagan was president because I thought he was a great president. But I'm going to say it like this. I don't identify with either political party. What I don't think is happening is these guys are too busy criticizing each other.
You're right.
When they should be trying to figure out common ground
Bruce,
to get things done for the American people. And I know you stated that before.
Yep, you are absolutely right.
To what you say.
Well, first of all, Bruce, let me just say thank you for those kind words. I really appreciate that. And you stated your opinion very eloquently. And you're absolutely right. I don't always blame one side of the aisle. Look, in the history of this country, all Republicans and Democrats do are, yell at one another. I think the political divide in this country is worse as it's ever been. Let's go to Steve. Steve, what's going on?
What's up, Steve?
Yeah, hey, guys. Thanks for taking the call.
Sure.
Are you open for education a little bit? Can you actually learn from somebody else?
Absolutely. I don't have an ego.
Like to prove a few points here.
I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean you're gonna. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to educate me, but I'll certainly try to learn.
It doesn't.
Go ahead.
You seem like a pretty emboldened kind of guy. And just for the record, I'm an independent.
So, as am I.
Sons of Liberty Party.
We have something in common. Okay, go ahead, Steve.
Okay,
we're listening.
There we go. What was Prohibition about?
Alcohol.
Absolutely not. It was about gasoline being put on every corner of America. And that's what Rockefeller's intention was. Henry Ford was an oil guy. See, so do your homework, and you'll learn that.
Okay, but what does that have to do with what we're talking about right now?
And Rockefeller did what?
Go ahead, Steve.
Did what to implement that?
No, what did he do? How did Rockefeller get extremely rich?
Number one, he was an oil baron. Number two, he sent 1,000 women to protest Capitol Hill, the women's temperance movement, to get that on.
No, it was kerosene in homes.
With all due respect, Steve, I appreciate your perspective, but I would rather watch paint dry. Can you please tell me what this has to do with the shootings and what we're talking about? With all due respect.
Okay, well, at least look up that.
Okay, well, I probably won't, but go ahead.
The strongest reason for people to retain their right to keep and bear arms is as a last resort to protect themselves against the tyranny and government.
Okay.
Thomas Jefferson.
Yes, we understand. I agree.
Okay, so given the Second Amendment, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. Okay, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, period. That means assault rifles.
All right. Well, JD wants my co-host JD wants to interject. Go ahead, JD.
All right. Since you're a buff, when was the Second Amendment instituted?
I'm sorry?
When was the Second Amendment instituted?
Well, immediately. Okay, right after when it was ratified.
What, 1776?
91.
Okay, go ahead, JD.
Hold
on. And Steve.
Now here's my point.
And Steve,
okay, hold on. Go ahead, JD.
At that point, what was the most destructive weapon on the market?
Okay. Well, first of all, Thomas Jefferson felt that American citizens deserve to have as much power as the federal government.
Steve, can you please answer JD's question? Steve, JD asked you a question. So what was the most destructive weapon in 1776?
Cannons.
Muskets.
Individual weapon. A weapon that you could hold.
An individual weapon. JD's trying to make the case that it was a musket, okay? What JD is trying to say is...
Well, they had cannons back then.
Okay,
so
but technology changes.
You couldn't hold a cannon.
Are you one of those people, Steve, that, we have to do exactly what our forefathers told us to do? I mean, and be honest with me. Are you one of those guys?
Yeah.
Okay, well, many of the forefathers... Okay, so many of the forefathers... Hold on.
Against the king.
I understand,
okay?
Steve. Many of those... Steve, many of those forefathers were also for owning people in slavery. Do you support that?
Move to Hong Kong,
Steve,
or Venezuela, or Argentina.
All right, Steve. No. I got to let him go. We got too many other people on the line, and he's driving me absolutely nuts.
Here's what matters. Right now, in 2019, there's weapons that can kill 100 to 200 people in less than a minute.
Yeah,
back in and I've talked about this literally 7 times.
Yes, you
back
have.
in 1776, those weapons didn't exist.
Yeah.
The Second Amendment should be revised to match technology in today's age. And if you say, okay, you want to talk about protecting yourself at home, if you had a machine gun to protect yourself at home, you would destroy all your things. You don't need a machine gun at home. You need a shotgun.
We talk about this every day.
You're not going to take on 10 to 15 MS-13 members. You're not going to get robbed by a horde of people unless you've got a massive house like Al Pacino and Scarface, which no one does.
I agree. And the reason why I brought up forefathers, by the way, is
you don't need heavy artillery to defend yourself at home.
I agree. The point I was trying to make is that our forefathers, many of them also believed in slavery. So don't give me this crap about our forefathers. Let's take some more.
Times have changed, and laws need to change with it.
Let's take some more phone calls. Let's try to squeeze in Austin. Austin, what's going on?
What's up, Austin?
Hey, I just wanted to say we believe some of the same things.
Okay.
But I wanted to say what that Antifa caller was trying to say, I believe, was you're a good guy, I'm sure, right? But
you're really wrong on that.
You sound a little angry sometimes when you get on your little rant.
No, it's called passionate. Austin, it's called having passion.
To your listeners very well. You call them names, kind of like Trump. I mean,
I've called one
people.
caller a name, and who was that? That was someone that said I looked like a member of Antifa, and I was from a violent... Hold on a second. Who have I called a name in this show except one person that attacked me? Austin, let me tell you something. When somebody attacks me...
Do you want an answer?
Well, when somebody attacks me and says something
I'll
that's...
answer that for you.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
So I listen to your show. I appreciate it. I listen to your show quite often because you're good. We agree on a lot of things. But I see this. I'm not like a first-time listener. I've listened to you throughout the last weeks, and I see this a lot. That's all. I can't name the names.
So give me an example where you think I was out of line, where I might have called somebody a moron or an idiot, and you think I was completely out of line, and I'll listen to you.
Okay, you have a great show, but I have a life that I care about more than listening to your callers that I'm like, he attacked him again.
Well, you just accused me of going over the line, and I'm asking you to give me a specific. I'm asking you to give me a specific example.
I'm just saying.
Well, no, you're not just saying.
Austin, I'll back you. Brian has probably insulted 150 callers since this show started.
Well, I mean,
it might be 300.
And do you think I was ever out of line?
99% of the time, there is a reason for it, and it's because that the caller, in his opinion, said something incredibly stupid or biased.
Agree. But he doesn't let them finish their thought.
This is true.
I've kept
that's
you.
My point.
I've kept you on the line now for 3 minutes, and all you've done is say that I go over the line.
I'm keeping you calm. That's my point.
No, you're not. I'm very angry at you, Austin.
All right, guys. Well, you enjoy your day.
Listen,
and,
Austin.
Keep up the good work.
Austin,
thanks a lot, Austin.
I appreciate the call. I'm never going to change who I am. I'm very passionate on the air and off the air, by the way. I appreciate the call. This is who I am. If somebody says something stupid or racist, I am going to attack you for it. It's the way I've always been. 257-5396. Let's go to, I believe, Pete is next. Johnny, is that correct? Pete, you're on. What's going on?
What's up, Pete?
Yeah, Brian.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, great show this morning. Listen, I want to have guns taken away from people. People are behaving badly. So help me. If Trump doesn't do something seriously about this gun issue, I swear I'm going to go vote for Bernie Sanders.
Well, Bernie won't be there in the general election, so that won't matter.
Well, Pete, I do agree with you that, Democrats and Republicans need to come together. I have no faith in Donald Trump, and the
Pete,
reason...
Why would you not vote for Kamala Harris?
I haven't given that much thought.
Okay. Well, Pete, I'm not voting for Bernie Sanders because I don't think people deserve $15 an hour minimum wage. I'm not comfortable with a 16-year-old making $15 an hour at McDonald's. I'm also not comfortable with free college for all. So while I attack Donald Trump on a daily basis, people misconstrue me as a liberal or a Democrat. I would never vote for Bernie Sanders.
He just wants our president to be a perfect human being.
Well, no, not perfect.
He wants Larry Poppins to be president of the United States.
No, I certainly don't want perfect. Pete, I appreciate your call, my friend. Thank you so much.
So you actually said that our forefathers were slave owners. They got rid of them. Jefferson got rid of his slaves.
Some of them. I didn't say all.
And if you remember the original Declaration of Independence, all men were created, and the South said, "You want us to sign on? You got to strike some of those."
I agree, but not all of them were not in favor of slavery. Some of them were. And when people say all the time, and they quote our forefathers, and we got to do, listen, times change, like what J.D. said. And that's the only point I'm really trying to make.
And Quincy Adams and Ben Franklin all knew that, hey, you know what, dude? The racial divide and the slavery, that's a battle that's going to have to come on later on the line.
We're going to talk about that because Spike Lee did an interview on CNN last night with Anderson Cooper talking about that. Let's try to squeeze in one more call. Unfortunately, Joel, I only have about 30 seconds for you, but I want to give you an opportunity, so go ahead.
Respond to the people who keep talking about owning firearms in case of tyranny. My question to them would be, where were you when Japanese Americans had their land, their businesses, and their homes stolen by the federal government? Where were they when people were being had dogs put on them in the 1960s because they were simply trying to vote? That was government tyranny. Where were these brave patriots back then?
Well, I wasn't alive back then, Joel. I can only speak for myself.
In the 1960s, you weren't alive?
No, sir.
Joel, I was born in 1985.
Yeah, Joel.
Oh, my God, you guys are kids.
Okay, well, Joel, I'm not a kid. I'm 39 years old, and that doesn't make my opinion any less valid than yours.
I believe the actual term is young men.
Got to take a break. We'll take a quick break. Be back right after this. We'll take more of your calls at 257-5396. You're listening to The Vegas Take. All right, welcome back. It is The Vegas Take, Sharp and Shapiro. We got Pat Cassell in studio, so this will be interesting because Michael Avenatti will be joining us in the top of the hour here, just coming up here in a few minutes. Boy, has he been in the news the last couple of days. Now, there are certain things that he cannot talk about in regards to the Nike scandal and everything that's been going on. We can, but he can't. But I want to ask Michael, because we're going to talk about this coming up next. Does Michael Avenatti think that President Trump is the king of the Jews?
Hell no.
Does Michael Avenatti think that President Trump's comments about if you're Jewish, you're disloyal if you vote Democrat? What does Michael Avenatti think about that? Well, we'll take a quick break. We'll be back right after this, and we'll talk about that. You're listening to The Vegas Take.